Welcome to Long Story Short. Today, we are dissecting S E Hinton's iconic 1967 coming-of-age novel, The Outsiders, a book that completely redefined young adult literature by refusing to sugarcoat the harsh realities of class warfare and gang violence. Imagine living in a deeply fractured society where your entire worth and your literal physical safety are determined exclusively by the neighborhood you were born into and the amount of money your parents have in the bank. You are fiercely loyal to your friends because they are the only real family you have. But beneath the tough exterior, you are terrified that you are completely trapped in a cycle of poverty and violence with absolutely no way out. That is the suffocating daily reality for our 14-year-old narrator, Ponyboy Curtis. This novel is not just a simple story about teenage rebellion and street fights. It is a profound psychological exploration of found family and the tragic loss of childhood innocence and the devastating impact of societal prejudice. Long story short, The Outsiders is a brutal but beautifully poetic examination of the invisible lines that divide us and a passionate plea to recognize our shared humanity before the violence destroys everything. Let us set the scene in 1960s, Tulsa, Oklahoma. The city is violently split into two completely warring factions. On the wealthy west side, you have the Socs, which is short for socials. The Socs are the rich, privileged kids who drive brand new blue Mustangs and wear expensive Madras shirts and beat up poor kids for fun without ever facing any real legal consequences. On the impoverished east side, you have the Greasers. The Greasers are the working-class kids who wear leather jackets and slick their hair back with heavy grease and constantly have to watch their backs to survive. Society views the Greasers as absolute trash, but within their own group, they share a fiercely loyal brotherly bond. Our protagonist is Ponyboy Curtis, a sensitive and deeply intellectual greaser who loves reading books and watching movies. Ponyboy lives with his two older brothers, the incredibly handsome Soda Pop and the stern, hardworking Derry. Their parents were tragically killed in a car crash, so Derry had to give up a promising football scholarship to work multiple grueling roofing jobs just to keep the family together and out of the foster care system. The Curtis brothers run with a tight-knit gang that includes the wisecracking Two-Bit Matthews and the incredibly dangerous Dallas Winston, who goes by Dally. Dally is a hardened criminal who spent time in violent street gangs in New York City, and he serves as a dark, cautionary tale of what the greaser life can ultimately do to a person's soul. Finally, we have Johnny Cade, the absolute emotional heart of the gang. Johnny is 16 years old, but he is incredibly small and deeply traumatized because his parents viciously abuse him at home, and he was recently beaten within an inch of his life by a pack of violent Socs. The entire greaser gang acts as Johnny's surrogate family, treating him like a fragile younger brother who desperately needs protection. The inciting incident occurs when Ponyboy and Johnny go to the drive-in movie theater and end up sitting next to Cherry Valance, a beautiful and wealthy Soc cheerleader. To everyone's massive surprise, Ponyboy and Cherry have a deeply meaningful conversation. Cherry explains that the Socs are not just emotionless monsters, but they actually struggle with the immense pressure of living up to impossible social expectations and hiding their true feelings. She famously tells Ponyboy that things are rough all over, completely shattering his naive assumption that money magically solves every single human problem. Ponyboy realizes that they both watch the exact same sunset from opposite sides of the city, proving their fundamental shared humanity. But this fragile moment of understanding is violently ripped away later that night. Ponyboy stays out too late, looking at the stars with Johnny, and when he finally gets home, his older brother Derry flies into a massive panic-driven rage. The argument escalates and Derry brutally slaps Ponyboy across the face. Heartbroken and terrified, Ponyboy runs out the door, grabs Johnny, and runs away to the local park to cool off. This split-second decision changes their lives permanently. At the park, they are suddenly surrounded by a group of drunken, aggressive Socs driving a terrifying blue Mustang. The group includes Cherry's violent boyfriend Bob, who is the exact same Soc who previously beat Johnny half to death. A brutal fight breaks out. One of the much larger Socs grabs Ponyboy and forcefully holds his head underwater in the freezing park fountain, attempting to literally drown him. Ponyboy blacks out from lack of oxygen. When he finally wakes up coughing on the concrete, he sees Johnny sitting next to him, completely frozen in shock, holding a bloody switchblade. Bob the wealthy sock is lying dead on the ground. Driven by pure primal terror and the desperate need to save his best friend Johnny, has committed first-degree murder. If S E Hinton's authentic and emotionally charged prose feels overwhelming, and you want to truly understand the tragic loss of childhood innocence of the text, you can get the full audiobook entirely for free by starting an Audible trial with my link in the description below. Listening to the original text is the absolute best way to grasp the deeply empathetic value proposition of this book. Now, let us examine the desperate escape and the heartbreaking climax. Knowing they will face the electric chair if they are caught, the terrified boys run straight to Dally for help. Dally gives them a loaded gun and $50 and instructs them to hide in an abandoned church on J Mountain in the rural town of Windrixville. For 5 agonizing days, Ponyboy and Johnny hide inside the dusty church, surviving on bologna and reading an old copy of Gone with the Wind. To disguise themselves, they cut off their long, greased hair, which is their ultimate symbol of pride and identity. One beautiful morning, they watch a golden sunrise together, and Ponyboy recites the famous Robert Frost poem, "Nothing Gold Can Stay." This profound moment highlights the fleeting and fragile nature of youth and innocence, predicting the massive tragedy that is about to unfold. Dally eventually arrives to bring them news from the city. He explains that there is an all-out massive gang war brewing between the Greasers and the Socs to avenge Bob's death. Johnny bravely decides he is going to turn himself into the police to stop the violence. But as they are driving away from the church, they realize the old wooden building has suddenly caught fire, and there are young elementary school children trapped inside screaming for help. Without a single second of hesitation, Ponyboy and Johnny rush directly into the burning inferno to save the innocent kids. They manage to toss all the children out of the broken windows, but a massive flaming timber violently collapses directly onto Johnny's back, breaking his spine and leaving him with catastrophic third-degree burns. Back in Tulsa, Johnny is hospitalized in critical condition, and the media suddenly hails the runaway Greasers as absolute heroes. The massive rumble finally takes place between the rival gangs. The Greasers fight viciously and ultimately win the street battle, forcing the wealthy Socs to retreat in defeat. But the hollow victory is completely meaningless. Dally and Ponyboy rush straight to the hospital to tell Johnny the good news, hoping it will give him the strength to live. But Johnny is fading incredibly fast. With his absolute final breath, Johnny looks at his best friend and whispers, "Stay gold, Ponyboy, stay gold." He is begging Ponyboy to hold on to his goodness and his innocence and to never let the brutal violence of the world harden his sensitive heart. And then Johnny Cade peacefully dies. This catastrophic loss completely breaks Dallas Winston. Johnny was the only thing in the entire world that Dally actually loved, and without him, Dally's life has zero meaning. Driven by pure, blinding grief, Dally storms out of the hospital, robs a grocery store, and intentionally pulls an unloaded gun on the responding police officers. He essentially forces the police to shoot him dying in a hail of bullets under a street lamp. He dies violent and young and desperate, achieving exactly the tragic end he always expected. Ponyboy is deeply traumatized by the deaths of his 2 closest friends. He falls into a severe physical sickness and a deep state of psychological denial. His grades plummet, and he begins picking up broken bottles to defend himself, threatening to become exactly the hardened criminal that Johnny begged him not to be. The final resolution comes when Ponyboy finds a folded note that Johnny slipped inside the copy of Gone with the Wind before he died. In the note, Johnny explains that sacrificing his life to save the children was absolutely worth it because their lives are still pure and full of potential. He begs Ponyboy to share their story so that other isolated kids will know that there is still good in the world. Moved to tears by his friend's final wish, Ponyboy opens his English notebook and writes down the exact first sentence of the novel, creating a perfect, beautiful narrative loop. If you want to absolutely dominate your AP literature exam, you need to master these 3 foundational symbols from this text. First, we have the greased hair. For the impoverished boys on the east side, their long, slicked back hair is their absolute only point of pride and their primary marker of identity. Because they cannot afford expensive cars or nice clothes, their hair serves as their unifying uniform and a bold statement of rebellion against polite society. Cutting it off in the church represents a profound loss of their protective armor. Second, you must discuss the sunset. The sunset beautifully represents the fundamental equality of all human beings. Cherry and Ponyboy realizing they both admire the exact same sunset proves that despite the massive economic divide separating their neighborhoods, they share the exact same emotional capacity and inner humanity. Finally, the poem Nothing Gold Can Stay. The color gold represents pure, uncorrupted childhood innocence. Johnny's dying wish for Ponyboy to stay gold is a desperate plea to preserve his sensitive and empathetic nature, rejecting the toxic, hardened masculinity that ended up destroying Dallas Winston. If you have a paper or a test coming up, watching a summary gets you the plot, but reading S E Hinton's actual prose is where you master the material. You can grab the physical copy on Amazon or get the audiobook completely for free with an Audible trial using the links in the description below. That is the long story short. Please like and subscribe for more literature breakdowns. See you in the next one.